A sharp crack of a hammer echoed down the quiet, tree-lined street just as Hannah Blake, now 32 years old, stepped onto the creaking porch of what she still considered her family's house. Her brows pulled together at the sight of a broad-shouldered man, early 40s, sweat trailing down his temples, pounding nails into the weather-beaten fence that bordered the property. A fence she believed was still hers. With every metallic strike, a wave of dread pushed higher into her chest. "Hey!" she shouted, voice taut with tension. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" The man straightened up slowly, blue eyes locking onto hers with calm intensity. He wiped his hands on his jeans, then pulled a folded envelope from his back pocket and held it out. "My name's Caleb Morgan," he said simply. "And this is the paperwork with my name on it." Hannah's breath hitched in her throat. The paperwork? What kind of paperwork? She took a cautious step forward, the gravel crunching beneath her sandals as she approached. Caleb didn't move, just calmly unfolded the document, aged at the edges but freshly marked in official ink. His name sat inside quotation marks on the title, looking terribly permanent. "This house," he said, his voice low but firm, "was officially transferred to me about 3 weeks ago. I'm not trying to start anything. Just fixing up what's broken before my daughter moves in." That last part, his daughter, landed like a punch to the chest. Her heart twisted. Following his gaze, Hannah looked toward the old pickup parked in the driveway. In the passenger seat sat a small girl, maybe 7 years old, her hair in messy twin braids, clutching a worn-out stuffed bunny with faded ears. The child's eyes, large and cautious, watched Hannah with the quiet stillness of someone unsure of what was happening but hoping it would turn out okay. "My daughter?" Hannah asked, her voice raspier than intended. Caleb nodded. "Her name's Lily. She deserves a place where the walls don't creak every time the wind blows. A yard she can play in. And a fence that won't collapse if she leans on it." His words weren't unkind, but they hit with the weight of reality. This house, her grandmother's house, was supposed to be hers. Her parents had made promises. Spoken of legacy. But promises didn't mean much when legal signatures changed hands behind closed doors. Hannah's chest tightened with heat, anger, betrayal, confusion. She clenched her jaw, but her eyes drifted again to Lily. The little girl gave a shy, tentative wave, fingers barely lifting off her rabbit. Something cracked inside Hannah. The fissure, small but growing. Caleb's face softened. "Look," he said gently, "I get that this is probably coming out of nowhere for you. But I didn't take this place from you. I paid every dime for it. I worked 2 jobs. Skipped meals. Saved for years so Lily could have something steady. I'm just trying to give her the kind of life she's never had." Hannah swallowed hard, trying to keep the tremble out of her voice. "Then why?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Does it feel like something was stolen from me?" Silence followed, thick as molasses. Only the muffled sound of Lily coughing from the truck cut through it. Caleb flinched at the sound. Reflexive, protective. That reaction told Hannah more than any speech could. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and stormed back inside, slamming the front door behind her. The sound thundered through the house like a storm cloud bursting. But she didn't lean against it for support. She marched into the kitchen, breath ragged, chest heaving like her ribs were too tight for her heart. The kitchen hadn't changed since her grandmother passed. Pale curtains fluttered against the cracked window frame. Mismatched ceramic mugs still lined the shelf. And that faint, ever-present scent of lavender, her grandmother's favorite, clung to the walls like memory. She gripped the countertop with both hands, knuckles whitening. "How could they?" she whispered. "How could my parents just give this away?" This place had been her anchor. Her tie to every childhood summer spent chasing fireflies in the backyard, listening to cicadas hum while she helped her grandmother hang laundry. And now, a stranger. No, not just a stranger. A single father with haunted eyes and a quiet child had legal proof that it belonged to him. A knock on the door jolted her out of her thoughts. It was soft, almost hesitant. "Hannah," Caleb called through the wood. His voice was calm but not indifferent. "I didn't come here to fight with you." She bit her lip, teeth sinking in. No response. The pause. "Lily's hungry," he said finally. I was gonna make something simple. I noticed the stove out back still works. You mind if I use it? I'll replace anything I use. Promise. Hannah blinked. The audacity. But there was something else beneath it. Humility. She cracked the door open just enough to see him standing there, hat in hand, posture straight but guarded, like he expected to be told to get lost. Behind him, Lily sat in the truck hugging that rabbit like it held her whole world. Hannah's voice came out sharper than she intended. You think you can just walk into this house and start cooking? Caleb shook his head quickly. No, that's not what I meant. I was only asking. She hasn't eaten since breakfast. Her gaze darted back to Lily, flushed cheeks, dry lips, trying to stay brave. Something twisted deeper inside. Something inside Hannah shifted, quietly, but undeniably. She opened the door a little wider and muttered under her breath, Fine, but I don't see how this changes anything. Caleb gave her a respectful nod and stepped inside, a small brown paper bag in hand. Lily followed behind, hesitant and quiet, her tiny sneakers squeaking softly on the tiled floor as if they were apologizing for her presence. Hannah leaned against the wall, arms crossed tightly across her chest, watching him with wary eyes as he unpacked the contents on the kitchen counter. A loaf of white bread. A jar of peanut butter. 2 green apples. A carton of milk. His movements were efficient and measured, hands rough from years of labor, but careful as though handling something fragile. Lily climbed into a chair at the table, eyes darting to Hannah for a fleeting second before quickly looking down at her hands again. You don't have to just stand there and glare at me, Caleb said, voice even but not unkind, as he spread the peanut butter onto a slice of bread. This isn't a takeover. Hannah scoffed. No? Feels a hell of a lot like one from where I'm standing. She muttered it, but her tone carried the weight of bitterness that went bone deep. This is survival, she added sharply. And surviving's already cost me everything. Caleb didn't look up. His voice, low and steady, came as he continued making the sandwich. Cost me everything too, he said. You think I enjoyed scraping together savings? Spending nights cold and hungry just so I could put in a bid on a rundown house? I didn't buy this place for the view, Hannah. I bought it because my little girl needs a roof that doesn't leak and walls that won't give way. His voice nearly cracked at the end, but he caught it, held it together with grit alone. He gently set the sandwich in front of Lily, who whispered a tiny, "Thank you, Daddy," before taking a bite, her small hands wrapped around it like it was a treasure. Hannah's chest clenched involuntarily. She couldn't remember the last time someone in her family had thanked her with that kind of genuine sweetness. Caleb finally met her gaze. I'm not your enemy. That line stuck in her head like a splinter even after she moved over to the sink, her eyes drifting to the backyard. The old wooden fence was half mended, half collapsing, like a metaphor for everything between them. A fractured past. Broken promises. Yet slowly, bit by bit, here was a man stitching the pieces back together, driven by nothing but sheer will and the fierce love of a father. This isn't how it was supposed to be, Hannah whispered, more to herself than to him. Caleb came to stand nearby, not too close, his hands tucked into his pockets. Maybe not, he said quietly. But life doesn't care how it's supposed to be. Life cares who shows up when it falls apart. She turned to face him, jaw tight, eyes burning with a cocktail of exhaustion and frustration. And you think that's you? She asked, voice edged with disbelief. Caleb's jaw flexed, but his words came calmly. I know it's me. Because I'm still standing. Because I don't walk away. Not from my daughter. Not from what I promised her. The room went silent except for the occasional, content munching sound from Lily, who was softly humming to herself between bites. It was a cheerful, absent-minded tune, like she didn't feel the storm brewing around her. Something sharp twisted in Hannah's chest. Maybe it was envy. Maybe it was grief. Her parents had never fought for her like this man fought for his daughter. They had chosen appearances, profits, and politeness. They had traded warmth for structure, approval for genuine affection. And now, they had quietly handed over her grandmother's home to a stranger. No call. No explanation. Just a letter in the mail with a fake apology and a list of reasons. She clenched her fists. "I'm not giving up without answers," she said, her voice low and tight. "My parents owe me more than this." Caleb's expression softened. The edge in his gaze dimmed, though a trace of shadow still lingered. "Then ask them," he said. "Demand those answers. Do not let them silence you. There's more fire in you than you give yourself credit for." She looked at him, surprised. "Why do you even care what I do?" Caleb smiled faintly, worn, tired, but sincere. "Because I know what it feels like to be made small. To be overlooked. To be treated like you don't matter. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone, not even the woman who thinks I stole her home." His words cut straight through her armor. Not with cruelty, but with unexpected, disarming empathy. She turned away before the moisture gathering in her eyes could betray her. Blinked again. But her vision kept blurring. That night, Hannah sat alone in what used to be her grandmother's bedroom, its wallpaper faded and curling at the corners. In her hands was an old photo of herself as a little girl, standing on the porch Caleb was now repairing. She stared at it until her eyes blurred again. With every breath, the house felt less like hers. And yet, for the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, ownership wasn't about names on paper. Maybe it was about who filled the rooms with something real again. The image of Lily, waving shyly from the truck, hovered in her thoughts until sleep finally took hold. The morning sunlight poured through the thin curtains in golden strands, brushing gently across the worn wood floor. Hannah blinked her eyes open, still clutching the photograph like a life raft. For a brief, perfect moment, she forgot about the chaos brewing behind the scenes. Then she heard it, laughter. A child's laughter, light and unguarded, floating up from the kitchen below. She sat up abruptly. "Lily." Without bothering to put on shoes, Hannah crept quietly down the stairs, careful to avoid the squeaky third step. The laughter was real, playful, full of life. It made something ache deep inside her. In the kitchen, she stopped cold. Caleb stood by the stove, flipping eggs in a skillet that Hannah instantly recognized, the one her grandmother had used for years. The scent of butter and yolk wafted into the air. Lily sat at the kitchen table, legs crossed, humming and coloring on plain white printer paper with a bunch of worn-out crayons. For a moment, the scene hit Hannah harder than she could have imagined. They looked at home. Not just staying in the house. Belonging in it. "You're making yourself comfortable," Hannah said, sharper than intended. Caleb turned, spatula in hand, offering a calm smile that didn't quite reach his tired eyes. Caleb had said it plainly, "We'll clean up before we leave." Those words echoed in Hannah's head long after they left the kitchen. Her brows furrowed as she stepped forward, arms tense at her sides. "What? Leave?" she asked, her voice sharper than expected. "You said this house was yours." Caleb nodded slowly. "It is. On paper, it is. But I didn't come here to toss you out, Hannah. That's not who I am. I've been blindsided in my life before. I know what that feels like." He hesitated, his gaze pulling toward the truck outside. "If you need time to figure things out, Lily and I can sleep in the truck for a few nights, until—" "No," Hannah interrupted, more forcefully than she meant to. The very image of Lily trying to sleep curled up in a cold truck seat made something twist painfully inside her. That little girl is not spending the night in a vehicle. Not when there's a roof right here. Caleb's expression softened. Gratitude flickered deep in his eyes. "That's kind of you," he said, his voice steady. "But kindness doesn't change the fact that you've been wronged." Hannah folded her arms across her chest, chewing the inside of her cheek. "I need answers," she muttered. "My parents promised me this house. Over and over. They said it would be mine. My grandmother wanted me to have it. And now, suddenly it's not? It's yours? Somebody's lying, Caleb. And I intend to find out who." He turned back to the stove, shoulders stiffening. "Then let me help," he said. "Because whatever deal they struck behind your back, I doubt it was honest." There was something in his voice, an edge of restraint holding back a deeper anger. Hannah saw more than just a tired single father in that moment. She saw a man who had climbed through hell for his daughter. A man who had no intention of backing down when something mattered. She whispered, "Why are you even helping me?" Caleb set down the spatula and looked her straight in the eye. His voice was low, his gaze unwavering. "Because I want Lily to grow up knowing that doing the right thing is always right, even when it's hard. Even when it costs you everything." The words cut straight through her. All her life, Hannah had been taught to stay quiet, to be grateful for the scraps of affection tossed her way. And here stood a man with nothing in his pockets, but his back unbent even at midday. Later that afternoon, Hannah stood in front of her parents' front porch, every nerve in her body buzzing. Caleb walked beside her, silent but solid. Lily remained in the truck, doodling hearts on the fogged-up window with a crayon-stained finger. The front door creaked open. Diane Blake, Hannah's mother, stood there in a cream blouse and a string of pearls, already scowling before a word was said. "Hannah, what are you doing here?" she asked flatly. Hannah held her head high, even as her hands trembled at her sides. "Why did you sell Grandma's house without telling me?" Her voice was fragile but firm. Diane's eyes narrowed. "It wasn't your house, not really. We managed the estate. You wouldn't understand, it was a financial matter." Caleb stepped forward, calm but assertive. "With all due respect, ma'am, I think she does deserve an explanation. That house wasn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It was a promise." Diane looked him over with thinly veiled disdain. "And you must be Caleb Morgan, the buyer." Her voice faltered just slightly for the first time. Her lips pressed together. "The property was undervalued. We needed to sell quickly. Frankly, you should be grateful we let you have it." Hannah's breath caught at those words. "You knew Grandma wanted me to have that house," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. At that moment, Richard Blake, Hannah's father, stepped into the doorway behind Diane. His tone was as sharp as ever. "Your grandmother was sentimental," he said. "Sentiment doesn't pay the bills. We made a practical decision. Time to grow up and move on, Hannah." But Hannah didn't flinch. "Not this time." "Move on," she repeated, voice rising. "You sold my future out from under me. You traded my memories for a check, and now you expect me to smile and act like it didn't happen?" Richard's jaw clenched. "Watch your tone. We are still your parents." Her hands were shaking now, but Caleb's steady hand gently touched her arm, just enough to ground her. She drew strength from the silent gesture. "No," she said clearly. "You stopped being my parents the day you decided money mattered more than I did." The silence that followed was deafening. Diane laughed bitterly, her trademark dramatic flair kicking in, but her eyes betrayed discomfort. Caleb's voice broke the stillness, quiet but resolute. "You can ignore her all you want," he said, "but I've seen what she's fighting for. And if Lily has taught me anything, it's this. Children remember when their parents choose themselves instead of choosing them." Richard's lips pressed into a hard line, but he said nothing. Hannah turned without another word, her throat tight, her heart raw. She walked down the steps, Caleb right beside her. Lily waved eagerly from the truck window as they returned. The second Hannah climbed into the passenger seat, the tears came, silent, steady. "I thought hearing the truth would make me feel whole," she whispered, wiping her face. "But all I feel is hollow." Caleb glanced at her, his voice soft. "That hollow place? That's where something new can begin. Trust me, I've lived in that space for years." That evening, back at the house, Hannah stood at the window, watching Lily spin around the backyard with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. The newly mended fence framed the moment like a photograph. Caleb sat quietly on the porch steps, worn but calm, watchful in the way only someone who had learned to survive alone for far too long could be. Hannah joined him. She sat down beside him and looked out at the yard. "You know," she said after a moment, "maybe this house doesn't have to be yours or mine. Maybe it can just be ours. A place that finally means something good again." Caleb turned his head, surprised. His voice was quiet, like a whisper meant only for her. "You're sure?" She nodded. A faint smile broke across her lips. "I'm tired of fighting for a place I was never really welcome in. But here, watching Lily laugh, for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Caleb didn't say anything. He just looked at her, his eyes softening, gratitude shining in the fading light. They sat in that silence, not awkward, not heavy, but full of truths neither of them had the energy to speak aloud. As stars slowly blinked into the night sky, Hannah understood something her parents never would. True ownership was never about deeds or inked signatures. It was about the love that filled a space, the laughter that danced through its hallways, the kindness that stitched broken things back together. And in that moment, as Lily's joyful giggles echoed under the moonlight, Hannah realized this house finally had a chance to become a home again. What does home mean to you? What would you do if you were the heroine? Write in the comments. Your point of view is important. Leave a like if this story touched you. Subscribe so you don't miss the new true and heartwarming stories we prepare for you every week. Support us, tell your friends, and let's make this channel a place where real emotions live.